Hello, my name is Matthew, and the other week I made a really fun video talking about some of my favorite books of the 20th century, and it naturally got me thinking about my favorite books from the 19th century. And it's a fun exercise. It's also, I feel, a healthy and instructive exercise to spend some time really thinking about my own tastes or your own tastes, and putting together not a ranked list, but just to think about what kind of books that you really enjoy and how do they compare to your reading in general, your reading as a whole. So I thought about it. I had some great fun going up and down my shelves, pulling down some books. Again, it's important to make the distinction that I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite books of the 19th century, not books that I would say are necessarily the greatest books or the best books. And I think there's good reason for that. One, I have no legitimate expertise on the great books of the 19th century. And also, as a whole, although I've read a lot, I've read exactly 0% of all the books written in the 19th century. So these are the books that I've read and that I enjoy. And when I think about my favorites, two really interesting elements come to mind. I've done this periodically, so throughout the years, and each time I think about some of my favorite books, one element is that I've read more now than I did a year ago and 10 years ago, so I have a wider net of books in my head. And then also the element of time, which I think is a very influential part of books that I would consider my favorites, books that I've lived with for a long time. Some of these books are recent reads, but I already know that I'm looking forward to reading them in the future. And of course, my judgment will change. Some of these books are some of my dear old friends. So I'll get started with kind of some newer reads. And I'm going to show The Mysteries of Paris by Eugene Sue, which I've talked about relatively recently. I think I made a video, I can't remember, but it's a gigantic, sprawling series of adventure stories with a zillion characters that we follow along. We go to the depths of poverty and slums and criminal organizations and villains, up to really every kind of sphere of society is curled up in this book. Now, I'm going to hold up, so this would be number one. Then I have The Count of Monte Cristo, which is an adventure story and a story of revenge. And then these all count, so I'm counting each of these singularly. Les Miserables. A big reason why they're on this list now is because Les Miserables and The Count of Monte Cristo, so Hugo and Dumas, were inspired by The Mysteries of Paris, and maybe also wanted to capitalize on the success of The Mysteries of Paris. And I've read all of these books really close together within the span of a couple months, and so there's a really gratifying feeling of being a part of these great minds and these great books, kind of having a conversation with one another, and reading them all so closely, seeing similarities, and how Dumas took one approach and Hugo took a different approach, and how they still come back to the mysteries of Paris, I find just absolutely fascinating. Reading these books close together, really a terrific experience. They're all gigantic books, I understand, but each one of them is a masterpiece and amazing. And altogether, there's something cumulative about that reading experience. So 1, 2, and 3. Not ranked. I was actually thinking as I was putting this list together, I thought, like, oh my, is this going to be just a list of my favorite French authors? And I restrained myself. I wanted to make sure I kind of put proper constraints on my thinking. I actually thought about maybe in the future making a list of like my all-time French books. I might have already done that, but again, like I was saying about periodically doing this, things change. And I think this would be the last French book, and Sentimental Education by Flaubert. Basically, every book that I'm holding up, I'm also holding up the authors. So Hugo, Dumas. I haven't read anything else or know anything else by Eugene Sue, but really anything by Flaubert. The reason I'm holding up Sentimental Education, and this is a new translation which I have not read yet, but I've read a couple translations. I think my personal favorite is a translation by Perdita Burlingame. But the last time I read it, I was so taken by the sensory experience of the novel, the sense of sounds and smells and tastes, and the whole environment and physical descriptions, and interior lives. The whole world of this book, Flaubert masterfully and economically is able to provide all of those sentences in sometimes the briefest senses. I mean, in the briefest phrases. The sights and sounds and smells of this world. It's just incredible. And a just beautiful writer as well. Okay. We'll go to America. And it's just a great book, but this is my copy of Moby Dick by Herman Melville. Incredible book. This is one of those books that contains a world. We have fantastic, iconic characters, iconic first opening line, "Call Me Ishmael," and all the characters on the ship. Of course, Captain Ahab, Starbuck, and it's a book that just swallows you up. You're at sea, and you might be chasing a monster, but there's also a monster chasing you. And I think a lot of these books I've also talked about at length in other videos, so I think I have a Moby Dick video. Speaking of favorites compared to great books, there are noticeable omissions. I love Tolstoy. Tolstoy's great, but I don't go back to him very often. And although if I were to make a list of the great books, it would be misrepresentative to not have Tolstoy. But for as much as I like him, he didn't make the cut because there's other books I like more. For a Russian, I have Dead Souls by Gogol, and this is my favorite translation, which is by Donald Rayfield. It's a New York Review of Books edition. I love the cover. And for all the great elements of this book, the absurdity and the mystery, the description, it's such a funny book. Gogol's a very funny writer, and there are scenes in this book that I think about kind of all the time. These scenes will pop into my head, and I'll just chuckle to myself. The conversation with the main character. I'm going to embarrass myself. But the main character and the woman selling the hemp. Really everyday situations that he takes the comedy just up to the comedy and absurdity to heights. There's a scene of two characters both being overly polite, asking the other person to go through the doorway first, and they compromise and decide to go through the doorway together, both corpulent, so they're being very, very polite while they squeeze themselves through a door. It's just hilarious, and deep. It's also there's a lot of weight in this book as well, but boy, is it funny. What do I have? So I wanted to hold up. Actually, I'll do this one. Maybe a little bit of a cheat. I'm not quite sure. I tried to constrain myself to novels. This book maybe has a nebulous categorization, but it's what's the title? Sketches from a Hunter's Notebook. Sketches from a Hunter's Album. I say that because different translations have different titles. This is the Penguin translation. And it's a loosely connected series of sketches or short stories of a man in the countryside of Russia with his dog and his gun, and going to little hamlets and cottages and far off remote places in the woods, and running into a wide variety of characters and having a wide variety of interactions. It's very strange. There's elements that feel supernatural. It's very pastoral. It's beautiful. It's idyllic to think about walking through the countryside with this companion and his dog. It's just a fascinating glance into a whole society. Turgenev has a lot of really great books, Fathers and Sons, and Rudin, Spring Torrents, Home of the Gentry, Virgin Soil. The reason this book would make my top 10 compared to other writers or books is that it's been such a bedside companion. I've literally, I would keep this on my nightstand, and it was just one of my go-to books to just pick up and nearly open it up at random, just pick a chapter and read a story. Turgenev, and this book in particular, has just been such a good companion to me. I couldn't find the book that I was looking for, and I spent far too much time looking for a book that I know that I have, and I finally gave up because I'm not even actually planning on reading it right now. I just want to hold something up in front of a camera while I'm talking. So this is, the book I'm holding up is The Mayor of Casterbridge by Thomas Hardy. My favorite of Thomas Hardy, the book that I wish I was holding up right now, is Jude the Obscure, which is one of my favorite books, and one of the many reasons that I hold it in such high regard, a very personal reason, very much like The Picture of Dorian Gray, which I just spoke about on camera a couple days ago or something, is a joyous introduction into reading for pleasure. The Picture of Dorian Gray was one of the first books I read and thought, like, my goodness, this is fun. Reading Jude the Obscure, which from an outsider of reading books at the time that I read it, thought of 19th century books, old books, as these dusty old things, not things that are alive, which I now I know. And I had read a few books. I was getting. I was determined, and I read that book, and it really struck me. I thought, just, my goodness, like, I don't know. It's serious. It's extremely tragic. It has just one of the most powerful and heartbreaking climactic moments. It has some of the strangest characters. Father Time. There are parts that I think are hilarious in a very dark and sinister way. I've read, I can't say I've read everything by Thomas Hardy as far as his novels go, but it's my favorite among many great books, including The Mayor of Casterbridge, Two on a Tower, Return of the Native, Tess of the Ubervilles, and it's such a great story. I've read it many times, and it's one of those books that was a turning point, a moment of understanding the great experience that a book can provide. I mentioned the Picture of Dorian Gray, which, if I hadn't recently read it, there's a possibility for the experience that I'm explaining now with Hardy could have made this list, except I read it and I loved it, but objectively, or at least in my mind, objectively, there are parts of the book that just do not hold up upon rereading. The first section of The Picture of Dorian Gray is just masterful. There's a section where it turns into kind of a standard pot boiler, and then with a great ending. But okay, I think we have two books left. The last book, which I'll hold up, is my favorite book, and we'll get there. The rest of these are kind of interchangeable. I could have thought of a different book. I have a lot of favorites, but Middlemarch, which I have, unlike The Picture of Dorian Gray or Jude the Obscure, this is a book that I have a contentious relationship with, or a contentious past with, because the first time I read this book, I really did not like it, and it's because I was young, a relatively inexperienced reader, didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I didn't understand the writing style, and actually, because of the influence of my old friend Bob, he urged me, one, to finish it while I was grumbling about how boring I thought it was, and to revisit it. So I've read it a few times, not many, maybe three. I've definitely read it twice, but I think I've read it three times. And I think I talked about Middlemarch on my channel. And it's a book that has transformed in my mind. the last time I read it, which was kind of recently, it's just brilliant. It's another book. Many of these books are microcosms, these little worlds that you're invited into. And George Eliot is the narrator of Middlemarch, is this kind of omnipresent, omniscient narrator showing you a whole world. And it's just brilliant, it's beautiful, it's philosophical, it's dramatic, it's funny, it's it's just amazing to read something and think like, gosh, like I hate this book, and then to read it again and think it's close to perfect. I do think, at least for me, it's a book that I had to work towards. I needed to read more, and I read this when I hadn't really read that many books at all. To start getting reference points for a wide variety of reasons, writing styles, references. So anyway, George Eliot. And then the last book, which is my number one favorite book, which it would be very difficult for it to be knocked off its top slot. I would say impossible, but and if you're someone that has watched a handful of my videos, it should come to no surprise, but it's The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. And the book that I'm holding up in particular is one of my prized possessions, and I'll try to explain that briefly. This is the Michael Katz translation. And I know I've made many, many videos on Dostoevsky. I did a whole reading series of a video series going through each book of the Karamazov brothers. I made a video about this book in particular. I made a video about all the different translations. So it's the story of a dysfunctional family, and without giving anything away, it's the plot of the book. There's a murder. This book in particular, because of making videos and putting them online, I've made friends and I've made connections, and some people that start getting a higher subscription count. They have ways of getting new books and getting free books, books in advance. And I reached out to someone in the industry, and I said, this is one of my favorite books. It's coming out in the future. Is there any way you could give me some guidance or advice on how to obtain an early copy that I could read, make a video about, and publish, post my video on the publication date of the book? And my friend responded. He in fact had 2 copies, and he was happy to send it to me. So this is an advanced reader copy that, because of making these videos and making friends, I was able to obtain. The days waiting for this thing to arrive in the mail, I felt like a kid days before Christmas, and just checking, is it there today? Is it there today? And it arrived, and it felt like Christmas morning. And I don't know, this book in particular is very special to me. The book, the story, and the story of this experience and this physical copy. It's very important to me. And like all of these books, everything by Dostoevsky is great. Everything that I've read by George Eliot is brilliant. I think there's a wider variance and what appeals to me, but still, Melville, all these books. So those are some of my favorite 19th century books, novels. I might do the French, a list of my favorite French books sometime in the future. Actually, while I was thinking about this, I thought, like, oh my god, am I gonna end up doing my favorite 18th century books? But anyway, if that's something, let me know. I could try. It might get a little bit stranger, but so anyway, thank you for watching. Please leave a comment if you would like your favorite books, anything at all. So thank you for watching. Leave a comment if you would like. Thank you and take care.